From 1985, it's After Hours, coming to the collection as a 4K UHD combo release. Desperate to escape his mind-numbing routine, uptown Manhattan office worker Paul Hackett, played by Griffin Dunne, ventures downtown for a hookup with mystery woman Rosanna Arquette, and so begins the wildest night of his life, as bizarre occurrences involving underground art punks, a distressed waitress, a crazed Mr. Softy truck driver, and a bagel and cream cheese paperweight pile up with anxiety, inducing relentlessness and thwarting his attempts to get home. After Hours was critically acclaimed for its black humour and is considered to be a cult film. The film won the Independent Spirit Award for the Best Feature, and Scorsese won the Cannes Film Festival Award for Best Director, and the Independent Spirit Award for Best Director of the film also. Critics have called it Kafkaesque, almost as a reflex, but that is a descriptive term and not an explanatory one. Is the film a cautionary tale about life in the city? And to what purpose? New York may offer a variety of strange people awake after midnight, but they seldom find themselves intertwined in a bizarre series of coincidences, all focused on the same individual. You're not paranoid if people really are plotting against you, but strangers do not plot against you to make you paranoid. The film has been described as dream logic, but it might as well be called screwball logic. Apart from the nightmarish and bizarre nature of his experiences, what happens to Paul Hackett is like what happens to Buster Keaton. Just one damn thing after another. The project was not personally developed by the director Martin Scorsese, who was involved at the time in struggles over The Last Temptation of Christ. Paramount's abrupt cancellation of that film 4 weeks before the start of the production, the sets had even been built, the costumes prepared, sent Scorsese into deep frustration. Now, after rejecting piles of scripts, he received one from the producers Amy Robinson and Griffin Dunne, who thought it could be made for $4 million. Now, it had been written by Joseph Minion, then a graduate student at Columbia, and Scorsese was later to recall that Minion's teacher, the Yugoslavian director Dusan Makayev, gave it an A, and he decided to make it. British director Michael Powell took part in the production as well, and Powell and editor Thelma Schoonmaker married soon afterwards. Nobody was sure how the film should end. Powell said that Paul must finish up back at work, but this was initially dismissed as too unlikely and difficult. They tried many other endings, and a few were even filmed, but the only one that everyone felt really worked was the original ending, and that's the one they decided to go with. The cast of After Hours features Griffin Dunne as Paul Hackett, Rosanna Arquette as Marcy Franklin, Verna Bloom as June, Thomas Chong as Pepe, Linda Florentino as Kiki Bridges, Terry Garr as Julie, John Hurd as the bartender Tom Shore, Richard Cheech Marin as Neil, Catherine O'Hara as Gail, Dick Miller as Pete, the dinner waiter, and Scorsese appears himself as the Club Berlin searchlight operator. After Hours grossed only $10.1 million in the US, but was given positive reviews by critics and went on to be considered an underrated Scorsese film. The film did, however, garner Scorsese the Best Director award at the 1986 Cannes Film Festival and allowed the director to take a hiatus from the tumultuous development of The Last Temptation of Christ. And it was also the first film of his, well, what would be a long collaboration with the German cinematographer Michael Ballhaus, who had worked with Fassbinder and therefore knew all about low budgets, fast shooting schedules and passionate directors. It was shot entirely at night, incidentally, and sometimes with on-the-spot improvisation of camera movements, as in the famous shot, of course, where Paul Hackett, played by Dunne, the hero, rings the bell of Kiki Bridges, that's Linda Florentino, and she throws down her keys, and Scorsese decides to use a POV shot of the keys dropping towards Paul. Now, in pre-digital days, that really had to happen. They tried fastening the camera to a board and dropping it towards Paul with ropes to stop it at the last moment. And Dunne was risking his life with that, but after that approach produced out-of-focus footage, Ballhaus came up with a terrifyingly fast crane move instead. Other shots, Scorsese said, were in the spirit of Hitchcock, fetishizing Close-ups of objects like light switches, keys, locks, and especially faces, because we believe a close-up underlines something of importance to a character. Scorsese exploited this with knowledge that unmotivated close-ups, of course, would work, and Paul thought something critical had actually happened, but much of the time it had not. In an unconscious way, an audience raised on classic film grammar would share his expectation and his disappointment. Genius filmmaking. Now, the film comes on 2 discs, of course, and the first disc is a 4K UHD disc with a 4K digital restoration, which has been approved by editor Thelma Schoonmaker with uncompressed mono soundtrack. And there's also a Dolby Vision HDR encode, and the Blu-ray, of course, also contains the films and the following special features. A new conversation between the director Martin Scorsese and the writer Fran Lebowitz. Audio commentary featuring Scorsese, Schoonmaker, director of photography Michael Ballhaus, actor and producer Griffin Dunne, and producer Amy Robinson. There's a documentary about the making of the film featuring Dunne, Robinson, Schoonmaker and Scorsese. A new programme on the look of the film featuring the costume designer Rita Ryak and production designer Jeffrey Townsend. There are deleted scenes, a trailer, and an essay written by the critic Sheila O'Malley. And the very attractive cover art is by Drusilla Adeline Sister Hyde. With this Kafkaesque cult classic, Martin Scorsese, abetted by Michael Ballhaus's kinetic cinematography and scene-stealing supporting turns from Linda Florentino, Terry Garr, Catherine O'Hara and John Hurd, tells a darkly comic tale of mistaken identity, turning the desolate night of 1980s Soho into a bohemian wonderland of surreal menace. From me, it's goodbye, and above all, good viewing.